You know what to do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Welcome back to the DT show. It's been a couple of days. I hope you guys had a safe weekend. I hope everything, it's kind of cold out there now in most of the country. So I hope you guys are bundled up and safe. Stay off the roads, especially when there's iciness. If you don't need to be on them, the whole 9 yards. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Our mods, our subscribers, our members, those that are just tuning in. Appreciate you as well. I'd hope you consider hitting the subscribe button. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go into two cases. We're going to talk about the Karen Reed case. And we're also going to talk about Bryan Kohberger case. In Bryan Kohberger's case, there's some new docs that have been dropped that I want to discuss and talk about. I also got some pictures to show you guys on some fingerprint evidence that may be coming up in court. So I got some of those images. But first, we're going to get into the Karen Reed case. There's been apparently like a lot of things have been debunked here recently. Let's see. Let's share the screen real quick. All right. So let's get this going. So this one here says that the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office says that defense experts have been debunked. Opinions are not an example of a battle of experts, but instead an attempt to infect the jury with inadmissible opinion that is not permissive on reliable digital forensics. And I think this is going to be something that we're going to probably be hearing a lot of that occurred in the first trial, apparently. I still haven't seen the whole thing, but I'm watching this entire second one. And, apparently there was some things that were in there and allowed to be in there that maybe perhaps shouldn't have been allowed to be in there, especially if things were actually truly debunked and were not part of evidence. Like, for instance, or shouldn't have been a part of the trial. I'm sorry. Like in the Richard Allen case, remember they wanted to bring in these guys and, alternative theory and this, that, and the third. However, they had no methodology. They had no actual hard proof evidence of anybody of Odinism actually being there. There was no, and in fact, there was evidence to the latter. They all had alibis and were checked up on and things of that nature. And so in that case, and we're probably going to see that also in the Bryan Kohberger case as well. But in that case, when it comes to like alternative theories or alternative persons or whatnot, if there's a clear way of debunking that theory or there's evidence to prove that that didn't happen, that's usually not allowed in court, right? You don't want to drag somebody else's name into the mud who is probably, has nothing to do with the case and is innocent. And so it sounds like we're going to see a lot of that in this. We're going to see the first here. This is in a new legal filing. The Norfolk County District Attorney's Office calls that the claim debunked and is asking for judge in the case to prevent the hurt team's lawyers from calling in the retrial the expert who says that the search was made before O'Keefe's body was found. Richard Green's debunked opinions are not an example of a battle of experts, best left to be resolved by the fact finder, but instead an attempt to infect the jury with an inadmissible opinion that is not permitted on reliable digital forensics, prosecutors wrote in their motion filed Tuesday. The prosecution contends that the house, which was a misspelling for house long to die in the cold search was made at 6:23 a.m. by Jennifer McCade and friend of O'Keefe's. Shortly after she and Reed arrived at the house on Fairview Road, outside of which O'Keefe was lying stricken in the snow, they have backed that analysis up with testimony of an expert from digital forensic company Cellbrite. The defense argues, citing Green's testimony, that the digital evidence shows McCabe made that search at about 2:30 a.m. and that McCabe was helped cover up who really killed O'Keefe at the Fairview Road home, where she and others attended a small party earlier in the evening. McCabe took the stand in the trial, which ended with a hung jury last summer. She said, "I did not make that search at that time. I never would have left John O'Keefe out in the cold to die because he was my friend that I loved." McCabe said that she actually researched the basketball team for her daughter at 2:27 a.m. and left the tab open. She said that when Reed asked her to look up how long to die in the cold, they found O'Keefe's body and she searched with the same tab. The prosecution said in Tuesday's filing that their experts' reading of the digital information unequivocally disproves the defense's expert reading. Moreover, they said Cellbrite has even updated its software in light of this debate, and that the updated confirms that the search was made at 6:24 a.m. So this is actually Cellbrite. This is the person's the I guess they were getting the initial information about. And what had happened was Jennifer and Kate opened up a tab to look at something. You know how on the phones you can have multiple tabs? I know I do on mine. And you can go back and forth. Usually I'm looking at a bunch of different houses or cars or things that I want to purchase. And I'll have them open in a couple of different tabs. That way I don't have to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Well, apparently she had searched something on one particular tab. Now, when somebody asks you to search how long does it take to die in the cold, and you have somebody who's obviously passed away, I'm not sure if going through your phone, entering a new tab for that search is something you should expect in that moment. I think somebody was going to open up their phone and immediately just start searching on the tab that they were opened on. And so this kind of disproves, well, this does disprove the fact that there was ever a search at 2:30 in the morning. So those that continue to say that, you are wrong. It's been disproven. It has been debunked, even by the own expert witnesses, Cellbright of the defense team. So there it is. And there it was. And that's not the only thing that they're calling in as far as being debunked. Federal expert ruled out dog attack in Karen Reed case. So an expert hired by Karen Reed's defense team was the subject of a sharp cross-examination from specially appointed prosecutor Tuesday as he sought to bar the expert from testifying in an upcoming trial to her belief that John O'Keefe's arm injuries were caused by a dog attack in his death. The expert, Dr. Marie Russell, testified over the course of 2 days about her experience, qualifications, and methodology. Throughout both direct and cross-examination, she remained firm on her belief that the wounds of O'Keefe's right arm were caused by a dog bite, pointing to her years of experience treating such wounds in the emergency room back in the 70s and 80s. I do need to add that because I did watch this. I did take a look at this. I watched this entire cross-examination and things of that nature. And that's one thing I keep, seeing that people are missing out on, is that she really hasn't worked in that field or any of the things that she's claiming to be an expert on in quite a while. It's been quite a while. All righty. So during Russell's cross-examination, the special prosecutor, Hank Brennan, which I don't know if he was part of the first hearing or not, but this guy's sharp, and think about like how Judge was and Judge Hippler is. From what I've seen from the other clips in here, I don't even know if this guy was part of the initial team, but there was another guy that was kind of shorter, blonde hair guy with glasses, I believe. He, to me, he just kind of seemed like he didn't paint a picture correctly. He left things open for interpretation. And when it comes to Hank Brennan, I think that's kind of different. That's very different. But Brennan revealed new details about the defense claim that O'Keefe was attacked by a dog inside the Canton home on the night of his death. Brennan said that a Norfolk County investigator tracked down the dog in question, a German Shepherd named Chloe, owned at the time by Brian Albert, whose home O'Keefe was found outside of. And he revealed prosecutors went up and saw the dog and took molds of his mouth. Now, here's the thing. During this cross-examination, the prosecution was asking Dr. Russell if she was able to go and see the dog, if that could help her in her decision as far as what the injuries were, and maybe perhaps determine if it was in fact either a dog bite or a scratch, paw mark, things of that nature. And she was kind of hesitant at first not to say yes, but as the prosecutor broke it down and things of that nature, she said, yeah, of course, a mold would help, determining the sizes of the bites and things of that nature. Now, he asked at that point, like now that he got her to explain that is important, he asked her if she was aware about these dog moldings. And I think at first she said no, but then it kind of seemed like she said yes. And when he asked her, would you be, don't you think you should look at this to make your decision? And she said, no, no, I don't need to. I don't want to. The moldings won't do anything. It doesn't prove this or that. It just proves it's her bite at the time. Not considering, and even the prosecution asked, it wasn't a little bit of information better than no information. Don't you want to see the moldings and see if these things match? If the distance between the two teeth of the canine teeth are the same here as on the arm. Now they're doing all this and they're asking these questions because I firmly believe they're going to bring up their own. If this thing isn't thrown out about the dog thing, let's just say it's not thrown out and the judge allows it. They're going to bring in their own expert with the dog moldings of his mouth, and they're going to be able to determine that those are not the same. One of the things about having a hung jury in this type of case is this is allow the prosecution to see where they messed up. They're going to be able to see what the defense strategy is and be able to counteract those things. And from what I've been able to see here is more of a competent prosecution thus far. And, I think they're really going to do, I think at the end of this, I think Karen Reed's arms are going to be tied behind her back on a lot of these things as far as, are they going to be able to say that this was a dog tag? Probably not. Are they going to be able to bring up that how long does it take to die in cold? Probably not. So a lot of these things are being thrown out, and it's going to leave with only a few options. Let's see. Just want to see if there's anything else in here that would spark a memory from what I was reading in there. Russell testified it would be unusual for an emergency room physician to do so, was not rational position. And this is when it came to examining the dog, right, for the dog's teeth and things of that nature. Brennan also revealed that a deputy medical examiner hired by the U.S. Attorney's Office concluded O'Keefe's wounds were highly unlikely to be the result of an animal bite attack. Now, this is a U.S. Attorney's Office. Somebody that was hired by the U.S. Attorney's Office isn't somebody hired by, the state of Massachusetts or any of those things. So there's no connection here. If there was some sort of bias here or anything like that, these aren't agencies or people that are connected like that. And so I don't think that a medical examiner hired by the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to go in there and try to rationalize something so that somebody else can go to jail for no reason, right? The medical examiner continued. The medical examiner, John Walsh, wrote, the injuries do not photographically appear to be, nor are described as puncture bite wounds, according to Brennan. And once Dr. Russell was given that information that they weren't puncture wounds, she started saying they were a puncture tine or something like that, something different than puncture, but something similar. And often she started saying, oh yeah, well, that's a puncture. And and then she had to correct herself that it wasn't a quite exactly a puncture, but like an impression on his arm based on the teeth trying to, basically she said that the dog bit, but didn't break the skin because, and this was the crazy thing, she said because the sweatshirt was too tough. It was too thick. The dog couldn't press down on the sweater and create enough force to break the skin. I mean, you can clearly see there's a lot of broken skin on his arm. Now, granted, it's not anything that's deep, which is a huge question mark. I've seen a lot of dog bites. In fact, my brother was bitten by a dog. And if you guys want to see the picture of that, go check out one of the last videos that we put on. I actually pulled up a picture of my brother's dog bite. It was from a female German Shepherd that he was at a client's house. And it was a husband and wife, and he got there and the husband got home and forgot about the appointment and let his dog in. And the dog came in, found my brother and bit him in the arm and then let go and ran off because it was scared. That bite is very different. And I showed it there. And you know what? Maybe I'll show it at the end of the show here too as well. But let's see. Let's continue here. He argued, and this is Brennan argued, that Dr. Russell used no real methodology in reaching her conclusions and questioning her credentials and promoting the defense's theories. Brennan also pressed Russell on whether she was an expert in accident reconstruction, orthopedics, or biomechanics. During much of his questioning, Brennan attempted to introduce the possibility that O'Keefe may have been hit by a motor vehicle, as prosecutors have determined, pointing a cracked taillight on Reed's car, fragments of which were found on O'Keefe's clothing, including micro pieces. Right, there was micro pieces of glass that were found in his clothing. Now, that's not something that somebody can artificially go and plant. Right, these are things that you can't even see through the naked eye. All righty, let's see. Robert Alessi, an attorney for Reed, argued that Russell's credentials and experience were enormous. Barring her from testifying would be a serious blow to Reed's ability to defend herself, he said. The greatest danger to a defendant's right to a jury trial and present its witness is to have the entire motion supported by nothing but assertions of an attorney on the other side. But here's the thing. She never came out with anything saying any actual assertions. Everything was possible, probable, and then she counteracted what she was saying. She would say that it could be a claw mark, it could be a dog bite, and then at the same time say I'm 100% positive it's a dog bite. So then it's not a claw mark. The only reason she's leaving that opportunity for it to be in a claw mark in case those teeth marks, and I put that in quotations, aren't in the same distance from when they started and when they ended, meaning that the teeth didn't quote unquote flex, right? Because those don't happen. That doesn't happen. They stay the same. And you can clearly see on almost all of the injuries that there aren't anything that is that parallel. Most of them go from, they go either inner or outer. There's might be one that looks pretty parallel, and that's the really small one that she even couldn't even, I think she thought, they could be, I don't even know, incisors, I think is what she said. Didn't make much sense because they were really, really tiny. And then she even said that, well, I didn't specifically say because they brought up a picture of another person who actually was bitten by Chloe. And what the doctor said was that she did not say that this injury was created by a specific dog, just that it was created by an animal. And that it was, in my opinion, it was masterful by the prosecution. He got her to look really bad on the stand. I mean, there was a part where he was like, how do you know what John O'Keefe was doing? Because she was like, well, if he had his arm bent or if he had this or he had that, these are all conclusions of an attack. Yet there was no puncture wounds. There was none of those things. And in fact, let me pull this down. Let me pull up the autopsy photo real quick so we can go through that. Give me a second. All right. Okay, so this is John O'Keefe's arm. Like some of these, like right here, what the prosecution was saying, and I'm sure they're going to have somebody that's going to be able to attest to this, is that down here where the puncture is, and that it's going upward, which would be as if he had his arm in front of him. The dog would have had to have been like giving the dog a chokehold or something for him to have bitten him in that direction, right? This one right here is the only one that somewhat looks parallel, but you can kind of see that it's not. This right here is a lot wider than this right here is wider than right here by quite a bit. Same thing here. This part right here is wider than here than it is from like right here to here. And even if it was at an angle, it's one's going this direction, one's going at a slightly different angle. They're not parallel with each other. None of these are. You got the bruising right here, the upper shoulder. That's a real German Shepherd bite. If you want to see that, you need to go back and pause it. I'm not going to keep it up. But yeah, so this is the bites, and none of this makes sense as far as it being an animal bite. None at all. In fact, if you were to see that, if something would have broke and shattered outward, it would have cut and then gone deeper this way, as indicated with these images here. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not any of those type of things, so I can't explain a bunch of this stuff, but I said it very early on. This does not look anything like a dog attack whatsoever. There's not really any puncture wounds. The other thing too, so I guess the doctor claimed like this was a puncture wound at one point. Oh man, I went too far. Went the wrong way. This was a puncture wound. This was a puncture wound. This was a puncture wound. Right here too. And all these little things right here are puncture wounds. But when you zoom in close and when they have their explanation, they're like, he had some freckles on his arm. Now, I'm sure they're going to have some sort of, to say that in court and to bring it up to the defense's witness, it's probably because they got an expert on their own that's going to be able to attest that these are freckles and not puncture wounds. But either way, there's nothing that is like the same distance or anything like that either. Crazy stuff. But this isn't the only thing that's getting debunked. I mean, I kind of debunked the whole, well, I mean, I'm sure other people have. I'm not going to take credit saying, oh, it was just me first time or whatever. I know there's been other people that have probably said this. I just don't listen to many people I think Yellow Cottage Tales might be one of the only guys that I actually follow who talk about this case. Outside of that guy, not very many. I just found out who the turtle dude was, and man, that guy's kind of off the hinge a little bit, but to each his your own. That's the way he wants to do his content. I think he's a little bit reckless. Apparently they arrested him for the way he has been going at witnesses and things of that nature. So yeah, but yeah, let's look at this tail light thing. I want to show you guys that real quick before we move on to the Bryan Kohberger case. So let's go back. I'm gonna go back. All righty. So here is the car pulling out, right? This is Karen Reed's car. This light that you see at the bottom of the picture is emitting outward, so that way you can see the vehicle. And you can see quite a bit of snow at this time. And this ain't a small amount of snow. This is quite a bit of snow on the floor. It's blanketed everything. And this is as she's leaving. And what you notice here is the defense is going to want you to believe that when this vehicle struck here, because there was they did strike, that created the broken taillight. But there's no pieces of the taillight broken. And a significant part of the taillight is missing. A huge part. Let's see. Now, this is what the state put out there, but let me show you what's missing. Right on here. As you can see, this part right here is completely missing. It's not there. It's a huge piece of the taillight as well. That's not there. It's missing right here. You can see it even better right here. It is missing. There's the clear part that you can see that's underneath. In fact, you can see on the other side how it's supposed to look. You can see how it's connected. You can see that it is extending outside of the body of the vehicle. It's protruding. You just don't see that here. You see it broke. You see it broke, and you see a missing piece all right up in here like that. And then again, here it is as they're leaving, the broken taillight. I know some people are going to say, well, that picture was doctored, this, that, and a third, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Well, let's see. This is the video that I took those screenshots from. This is from Court TV, and this is from 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I've put that over here. I went back to the wrong one. Hold on. Okay. Give me a sec. There it goes. All right, so they're backing up. I do think she hits the vehicle there. You can see the vehicle move. I think it may have been on purpose, to be honest with you, because she may have known that she hit something before. But then again, she was highly intoxicated. There's no doubt about that. So as she moves forward, you know what? I want it more over here. Okay, so here we go. She backs up. She hits the car or taps it. It's not very, very much of a tap, but she taps it. Moves forward. Now, what you can see in this image, you can see right here on where the tire marks are, that where the tire took off enough of the snow to see the ground. So it's not, I mean, it's about an inch or two, on the ground. You can see a lot of different things. There's some sort of blue thing here, and there's a looks like a green trash can, a brown trash can. So just because it's dark and it's not very well lit, you can see quite a bit of things in this image. And yet, as she pulls away right there, I mean, even right there when she has the light on, I don't see anything reflecting off the ground, any light, any glass, any reflector from tail light reflecting off the ground. So there's a chunk missing of that tail light, and it's not there on the ground. You can see it's missing right here. You can see this is one of the other images. I wish I could zoom in, but that's missing right there. That tail light is missing. And as it goes away, now a lot of people are going to say, well, Daniel, pictures of the there's no pictures of it at the Sally port with the tail light missing. I think there might be. See, this is at the Sally port, and this is at 8:25 a.m. when the officers came and visited, did a welfare check, I believe, on Karen Reed. You can see this black line right here going through the tail light that, when you look at the entire tail light, that's red. That bottom part is red as well. You can see that here. You can see the same line. Yes, there is snow, obviously, but there is no red. You can see right here to the left of it, there's some red. You can see kind of up here at the top right part of the tail light, there's some red tail light there. But down here, there's nothing, and there's nothing going around anywhere here. So it is missing by that time in the morning. It ain't there. So in my opinion, you have some tail light issues. You have your Google search issues, and now you have the dog potential biting of O'Keefe, all pretty much, in my opinion, debunked. There is nothing there that says that is the case. I mean, what I don't think she's going to have much of a foot to stand on in this new trial. These are things you can't deny. You just can't. I'm answer a few questions before we move on to the Bryan Kohberger report. Daniel, if you are tech savvy or know someone who is, you can set up a pie hole on your network and. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe I need to check that out. Let's see. Put a couple stars if you have something for me to answer. Great job, Daniel. So tired of BS. John's arm was not bit by a dog either. I agree. Let's see. Let's see if anybody has any stars that has any comments towards me. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, like, all this stuff here just really, really speaks that it's not there. I mean, there was no dog DNA. There's a lot of things that go into play, and I highly suspect that these things aren't going to be allowed in court whatsoever. I'm interested to see how it goes this time. My son's friend is off work for a bad dog bite on his arm, and he said the pictures don't even look like a dog bite. Long gauges. I showed him John's arm and picture, and he said it looked very similar. So you're saying that you've seen on his arm, and he said the pictures doesn't even look like a dog bite. I showed him John's arm, and he said it looked very. So it's, I don't know. Maybe you're contradicting yourself a little bit there. I'm not sure, but I showed you guys a picture of my brother's arm, and there's actually a picture of Chloe's of a hand that Chloe bit, and it looked nothing like this either. Looked nothing like this. Let's see. So yeah, nothing like it. All right, I'm just getting everything else ready for the next part. All right. What is the big white circle area on his bicep? I'm gonna make it look. Are you saying this right here, this light coloration here? Well, that's because you have bruising up here, probably from the edge of the vehicle. You also have a little bit of bruising here in the back end, probably also being hit like in this direction. And as you can see, it's not really on the bottom part there, because I think that part is probably like covered this direction. That might not be there because, well, if something popped here, like a tail light, that's where you would expect to see some of the injuries from that. And so right here in this part here, and as you can see, maybe even a little bit over here, it's clear it's probably wasn't hit by anything. Let's see. They look like paw scratches rather than bites. I think the head injury is most suspicious because I don't see it happening at speed she was supposed to be when she just hit him. That's crazy. So I've investigated a lot of fatality injuries or fatality accidents, pedestrian versus vehicle, and I've seen fatalities at 2 miles an hour. And not just children, not just children, reversing as well. Somebody hitting themselves on the head on the pavement, very hard, will create. I mean, you don't have to have a lot of force for it to happen. If you just fall back and hit yourself on the cement, especially if you've been intoxicated, you've been drinking, your blood's probably a little bit thinner, you're going to create a huge laceration. That's for sure. It doesn't take a lot. I've seen somebody get pushed down. Now, there was a case where we had a child. We charged a guy with manslaughter because him and his buddy got into an incident where they were drinking. They got into it. He pushed him down. He hit his head on a piece of concrete step. It wasn't, 24 mile an hour. It was a push. It wasn't a hard push because the guy was drunk too. So it don't take much. The body isn't, life is precious. It's very easy for you to lose it. Very easy for anybody. A lot of people have this arrogantness about how they think that nothing bad happened to them or these things aren't real, but nah, very much so. Very much so. Let's see. Okay. I got bit on the upper arm by a dog and I had a big white circle too. This? Email me the picture. If you got bit by a dog that has that, let me see the picture and I'll be able to tell you. And then I also want to see the wounds, right? Are they consistent with this? Did the dog that created this white circle not have a lower jaw? There's some things. Also, this dog didn't leave any DNA on the shirt or the sweatshirt that it had to bite through. It's impossible, guys, that this is a dog bite. It really is. They just can't tell that what almost looks like someone blurred something out of it. Maybe. I mean, this is the defense's picture, by the way. This isn't the picture from the prosecution. This isn't that, because the picture from the prosecution that I had seen was only like, it was like this. This part was the last thing visible. Everything else was done, and it was at a different angle. This is the defense's picture. Let's see. Taillight doesn't make contact with John's car, and her bumper did. Yeah, I believe that. There's no pieces of taillight on the ground. I mean, if that's what caused this large piece of taillight from being, missing, this big piece right here, you see this? That's missing. That's missing too. That would be visible on the floor right there. There's no bruising according to the forensic. I mean, according to the other doctors too, there was a lot of different stuff, but you tell me, does that not look like some bruising? I mean, you're going to trust what somebody's telling you or what you can see with your eyes? Because when the doctor started saying, yeah, it would be good to have a molding, but I don't need it, after she was told that they had it, tells me that she probably knows this ain't a dog bite and she don't want to be proven wrong. And she's probably following up on what she's being paid to say. Let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. When I heard that, I was like, nah, this lady ain't credible. To go from that and say, yeah, because obviously it would be huge if you had the dog molding of the teeth to compare. I guarantee you that if this was the reverse and they thought that this was actually a dog bite, the prosecution would have that, and they were going up against somebody else. Let's just say they thought it was a dog bite. They would be using that forensic evidence to try to say that this person was bitten by a dog. Yet the defense doesn't even want it. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to touch it. It's been made available to them, yet they don't want to see it. Why? If this could prove that their client is innocent, why not test it out? Why not give it to your experts to compare and contrast with what they think? kind of obvious reasons for myself. Two-toed dog. That's funny. Yeah, Brendan ain't playing. I agree. He reminds me of Judge Hitler, where he's just like, look, I'm not taking y'all's crap. I'm not going to be putting up with any of this. But all righty. That was pretty cool. They're like, oh, I see like something being taken out. It is the defense's picture. All right, let's pull this down. Okay. So there was a couple of documents that were dropped in the Bryan Kohberger case. We're going to go through them, talk a little bit about them, talk about what they could mean, what they could be. So this is the first one. There was 3 of them. This is the order sealing the state's motion to extend no contact orders and amend no contact orders based on the state's stipulated motion to seal the state's objection to defendants' no contact orders and amended no contact orders. The court does hereby confirm an order that the state's motion to extend no contact orders and amend no contact orders are exempt from disclosure and sealed to pursuant to Idaho Court Administrative 32G1 for the reasons stated in the said motion ordered by Stephen Hippler. So I'm assuming, I'm not an attorney. Let's see, based on the state stipulated and seals state's objection to the defendants. It sounds like he agreed to this motion and is giving them the fact that they can't contact these people. So this is for the upcoming court hearing and trial hearing on January 23rd in preparation of hearings on the ICR 12 motion scheduled to begin January 23rd, 2025, the court orders. So this is the one that's recent. Remember, that's the one that they had that subpoena, Deuces Tectum, where they were basically hereby ordering somebody to go and testify for them on their behalf for the defense on this date. This says here, the defendant shall disclose its witnesses, exhibits, and expert opinions, if any. So nobody knows that they have any of these to the court by January 9th, and the state shall disclose theirs by January 16th. The defendant shall disclose any rebuttal disclosures to the court by the state no later than January 21st. Okay, so I think these are all going to have something to do with each other. So you have the 23rd, you have some motions, and you have a no contact order being extended. Let's go into this a little bit more. So now this is about the Franks and the IGG. This is order sealing defendants' replies to the state's objection to Franks and IGG. So this is what this, I'm not sure what state's objection it could be, but this was the state's motion that they had coming out about a no contact order. This is about the Franks hearing. Let's see what this says. It says the court having before its stipulated motion to file defendants' replies to the state's objection to Franks and IGG under seal and good cause appearing now, therefore, it is hereby ordered that the defendants' reply to the state's objection to the defendant's amendment, Franks' memorandum, and their reply to the state's objection to the defendant's motion to suppress and memorandum in support genetic information shall be filed under seal. So I think this is all going to have kind of something to do with this whole IGG stuff, right? Now, I think this is a losing argument on the defense's side because nothing was used to arrest Bryan Kohberger that has the IGG on its as a documentation for an arrest, for a search. Nothing. I've asked multiple times. I think a lot of people come saying like, oh, they're trying to throw out the DNA. They're trying to throw out this and that. And I keep asking and nobody keeps, I've gotten sent nothing because nothing exists. But I've asked to send me the motion, send me the warrant, send me whatever you have that says that the IGG was utilized to recover or, find or search for a specific item, person, or place. It doesn't exist. There's nothing there. It's all make-believe. And if the way the court system works is, especially with the fruit of the poisonous tree, is if you're having some evidence that you are using against somebody and it comes to find out that that evidence was gathered improperly, then that evidence can't be used against the defendant. Now, what evidence, again, is the IGG being used against Bryan Kohberger? None. Now, in my opinion, there's a lot of people saying something about, informants, informants here, confidential informants there. Somebody narked, somebody did this, somebody did that. It's clear that that's not the case, right? Nobody gave up Bryan Kohberger. Nobody called in saying Bryan Kohberger was the guy that committed this crime. December 19th was the date that the Moscow Police Department finally got word that it was Bryan Kohberger. And after that is when all the warrants started coming in and things of that nature. They did utilize the IGG to get a name, but it's inadmissible in court. It's inadmissible to use for warrants, searches, or seizures, which it hasn't been used. And so they had to go in there and make a case against him, which they were able to do. Now, if they got his name from the IGG on December 19th, they arrested him. 10 days later, they had to find him. They didn't track him down until the 24th. Or Moscow PD didn't know where they were until the 24th. That is my understanding. And I did save all 22 pages of the redacted information that was here before. So I'm still going through all that. I really haven't seen anything that's crazy that shouldn't be unredacted, but I do have that. So in my opinion, I think what they're going to try to do is they're trying to throw out this IGG stuff, which is not even being used, in efforts to, don't know. I think they're hoping, or what the hope is that, and I said this a long time ago, I think I said this over a year ago. What the defense is trying to do is they're trying to say that the way they got Bryan Kohberger's name was really through an IGG, and not by some happen chance that, police officer at WSU happened to drive by his car, and knock it down and write it up as a possible suspect vehicle. And so when they go to the grand jury, since they're not utilizing the IGG for anything, and they explain their evidence and how they located him, and they start spewing these things that, we had a countywide search, multi-state search of vehicles that match a description. I know that the defense is saying that, hey, they were looking for Bryan Kohberger's car after they had his name from the IGG. However, it wasn't so much that they were looking for a specific 2011 or 13 Hyundai Elantra. They were looking for vehicles that were similar to a 2011, 2013 Hyundai Elantra. And the way we could tell that is because they actually, in fact, indeed, jotted down Bryan Kohberger's vehicle and put it in the list. Bryan Kohberger's vehicle didn't match the 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, and I'm sure there's probably multiple vehicles that were on this list that weren't exactly a 2011 to 13 Elantra. These were vehicles that were similar, which proves that they were looking for vehicles similar, not necessarily exact. So this puts a big hole in the defense's argument, saying that, well, they only changed it because they knew his name. No. They had an idea of what kind of vehicle it was based on the information that they had from an expert who was looking at the vehicle. And then once they found once they got their suspect, obviously they went back and said, hey, can you say that this is not a 2015? Can you exclude it? So if you exclude it, then that evidence can be used against Bryan Kohberger. It's somebody else's vehicle, and you have a big problem. Can't exclude it, and who's to say also, and I think there's also this misconception, let me put it this way, that as soon as the police and the forensic team walked into the King Road residence, that all the evidence was on the table in a wrapped together and with a bow tie on it, including all the video evidence and everything else, categorized at time and markers and when this vehicle was seen, and et cetera and et cetera. That doesn't happen right away. You got to get videos will come in. You have to look at them. In fact, there was a video that wasn't picked up that I'm aware of, and it took them a few weeks to pick it up before they got it. And that's because they had so many. There was a lot of tips. There was a lot of people turning in video from that night. There's how many terabytes is Ann Taylor complaining about? Well, that's probably a lot of footage. And so as the evidence, or as the case goes on, they find better evidence, right? I mean, you're going to find more evidence day 20 than you would have on day one, right? Like, for instance, if you're out there on day one and you're trying to canvas for videos, you're not going to get every video. You're not going to be able to watch every video. You're not going to be able to mark every video. But by day 20, you probably got a good idea of what's going on with the videos that you've had. You still probably got other videos coming in, right? And he was only on the run for 7 weeks. People make it seem like he was gone for a year and they had all this time to create this amazing case before the PCA. They didn't even know who he was until, what was it like? I think the PCA was written on 27th. So about 6 days after they got his name, they wrote the PCA. You can't believe for 1 minute or 1 second or iota of anything that they knew everything in 6 days about Bryan Kohberger, about the evidence and those type of things. That's why when people say, oh yeah, the PCA says this or that or whatever, the third, yeah, that was what was needed at the time. Bare minimum information to get probable cause for a warrant for his arrest. It wasn't the be all end all of of the investigation. In fact, I can say about 95% of the investigation probably happened after his arrest. So, this genetic information stuff, if I had to take a guess as to why they want the names of the informants and they want to talk to them, it's probably because they want to go through every single one of those people that were part of the IGG and ask them, did you object to having your information used by law enforcement? So that way they can say that something illegal was done or whatever the case may be. Or maybe there is some sort of informant that came up after the fact. Once Bryan Kohberger was arrested, somebody came up and said, hey, you might want to look into this. This is what I know. Could be his professor. These are the problems that were happening at the school. Could be the PhD students that he was harassing. It could have been some of the female students that he was being sexist towards. I mean, there's a lot of people that it could have been, after the fact. But what I'm saying is before, I don't believe there's anybody there that said, hey, look at Bryan Kohberger. So if I had to take a guess, they want to see those people and ask them if they opted in for law enforcement to look, so that way they can have some sort of leg to stand on when it comes to this motion. But as far as an informant from the beginning, somebody that said it's Bryan Kohberger, doesn't fit, because it wouldn't have taken long to arrest him. It wasn't very long after December 19th to arrest him. The information that they had on him by searching the information they already had to see if his phone was in the area, looking at his Reddit, looking at his essays at school, which again, probably is an indication that maybe one of the informants could be an administrator at the school. They were, aware about his essay and what he wrote, specific things that he wrote, things of that nature. Those things could have came up afterwards, but to come up first, if, like I said, if any of those things came out, like if somebody would have said, hey, it's Bryan Kohberger, he drives a white launcher, look at him, I'm like, all right, let's look up his name. Boom, 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 boom. All right, hey, we gave him a citation not too long ago. Let's look up his phone number. Check out his phone number. It shows that it wasn't in the area, and be like, I wonder if he had it off. Let's look at his what he's in college for. Let's look up some things that he wants to be, and can we connect those dots? Oh, he's got experience in forensic. Or is it a cloud-based forensics? And so he's probably tech savvy. Okay, so that's a clue. He's in criminal justice, so that's another clue that he probably left his phone behind or turned it off. So in my opinion, they probably went out there and compared his phone number with the other towers that they had in the area. They probably saw his phone turn off. Come back saying, hey, most likely he turned it off. They get a warrant for his exact phone information to see that. Sure enough, his phone is not connected to the towers during the specific time and in the odd hours that the murders happen. And he specifically says that he's out and about by himself with no connection to the victims or anybody in that house. Interesting stuff, right? Kind of paints him in a corner that he can't say, oh, I was with somebody else saw me, blah, 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 blah. He's by himself. He can't You can't say he was at home asleep or doing any of those things. You know, the clues are there. The dots are easy to connect. It's just kind of funny that some people can't. Now, I was talking earlier about because the defense brought up that the state and the prosecution had witnesses, a fingerprint witness or an expert, I'm sorry, that they planned on having testify against Bryan Kohberger. And I think there's some clear things that need to be set, right? There's some guidelines and some parameters that are set. This is a prosecution witness. So for everybody saying, "Oh man, it's because they're looking for other people. It's for alternative suspects." Blah 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 blah. This is a fingerprint expert that is testifying against Bryan Kohberger, not against Joe Showalter or any of these other people, right? They might say, well, this fingerprint expert, maybe he's there to explain why there was no fingerprints at the scene, or that because there's so many fingerprints at the scene, they couldn't collect it. That's not his job. His job isn't to collect evidence. His job isn't to collect fingerprints. He probably never stepped foot inside of that house. That is for the collection CSI guys that go in there, they photograph and process the evidence. The expert comes in after the fact and looks at the fingerprints and try to come up with something with them, right? Their expertise, what they think. It's kind of like going and getting an x-ray done, right? Get an x-ray. The x-ray technician isn't a doctor. They take the picture, they collect the information, they document it all together, and they give it to the doctor to go in there and see what he sees or what she sees, and make an expert decision based on that information. It's the same thing here. This would be the doctor in that situation, and the CSI person would be the x-ray technician. Now, could it be, because I think some folks were coming up with, well, maybe they're trying to counteract or counter somebody else's theories, or the defense may have a theory about fingerprints or something. Maybe. I doubt it. I don't think that's going to be it. Some people were saying, well, maybe they got his fingerprints elsewhere. The only place or the only thing that I can see beneficial if they were going to get Bryan Kohberger's fingerprints to look at might be on the receipt and the Dickies tag. Those two things might be, even though they were in his home, in his apartment on the dresser, they may have wanted to fingerprint that to say, yeah, not only was it there, he may have said, oh man, I didn't leave that there, somebody else did, or something, right? Well, this fingerprint's on there, it's pretty much his. The other thing is too, like, is it possible that he left fingerprints elsewhere? Now, we do know one thing he touched barehanded because he left DNA behind, and that's the knife sheath. I've got some people in the comments section saying, hey, you can't leave your fingerprints on the knife sheath. If they had his fingerprints, they would have arrested him a long time ago. You got to remember the scene. You got to remember how much DNA that they captured, right? It wasn't very much, so it doesn't probably sound like it would be if he's leaving a small amount of DNA, it's probably more likely that he's leaving a small amount of a fingerprint. Now, I've contacted Steve from True Crime Web. He's a real CSI investigator, former CSI investigator that has done quite a bit of experiments. And I talked to him about this. I asked him, hey, if there was some fingerprints on a leather knife sheath and blood got on them, how would that affect the fingerprint? And he did say that, it would destroy the part where the fingerprint was, where the blood went on top of the fingerprint. So it'll probably leave at best some partials. And I asked him about, hey, how likely is it to leave a fingerprint on a leather knife sheath? And he sent me an experiment that he did. So this is a leather knife sheath that he had. And you can see in several different areas. Now, this is with some magnetic powder that he had to put on the leather knife sheath so that he could bring up the fingerprints. So this isn't what it would look like to the naked eye. You wouldn't be able to see it. This is after it's been administered the magnetic powder to get the fingerprints. Several different places just from handling it. close-up image of the fingerprint. And another one. So it is possible that he did leave some fingerprints. He touched it barehanded. He touched the button snap without gloves or protection. So I think it would be easy to believe that he also probably had his fingers exposed to the knife sheath, which would leave the possibility of leaving DNA DNA and fingerprints. I'm not necessarily saying that is what they have per se, but I would say I'm probably about 75% sure that it may be the fingerprints on the knife sheath, mainly because, like I said, we know he touched it. We know he touched it because there was single source DNA on there. It wasn't transferred DNA. I mean, it wasn't mixed source. It wasn't transferred by somebody else or anything like that. It was inside the button snap. And so how do you transfer that in there without transferring your own? Because if I touch you, like somebody walking and we bump shoulders or something like that, I'm going to get their DNA. They're going to get mine. And if I go touch something else and I transfer that DNA that I, from touching a doorknob or something, well, now that has that guy's DNA or gal's DNA, and it also has mine. And so when it comes to a partial print, it might be something that is very difficult to get into the system to test for. It may be something that takes a little bit of time to get a positive match on. Remember, they caught him in 7 weeks, guys. It's not a lot of time. There could be it could have, because of a partial print, could have taken more than 7 weeks for that to come back. In fact, they may not have extended at all, because if it was kind of small, they prefer to probably get a fingerprint of a suspect, match it together, see if you can get the ridges to match. We're taking things out of consideration and moving too fast and thinking, oh no, this is impossible because he gave us fingerprints. That's not entirely true. Now, had Bryan Kohberger committed this crime and they had his fingerprints on file and then he went and did a background check, that'd be a different story. But that's not the case either, right? So in the end, I think that this hearing on the 23rd, it's going to be a big one. A couple of motions. We're going to see what's up. They're going to talk about the IGG. And I hope at this point we finally get a resolution on that. And Judge Hippler does the only thing that the logical thing and say, hey, you can't, what are you going to do? Even if I were to say, all right, this evidence isn't allowed, it's not being used. That's why Judge, who as weak as he was and as much that as he gave into the defense, he even said it was a futile point. Which means that the argument isn't valid. But he was going to allow them to talk about it anyways. And so that's where we're at. And I'll answer some of your questions before we call it a show. Let's see. Hey, Barb, welcome to the team. Welcome here. Hope you like and subscribe. Let's see. Law enforcement is allowed to be vague to the public about facts until they have a suspect. They do that to weed out false tips and suspects. 100%. A lot of people are they take some things without understanding, right? Like, for instance, they don't understand why police wouldn't put out as much information as they possibly can so that they can catch the right guy. These people think that they're going to be the detective to catch the right guy, for one. There's a lot of people that think they're in on this case. I call them out all the time because people will say, oh, well, we didn't see that. We don't know that. And I'm like, all right, detective, how long have you been on this case? How much of this information do you know? Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean that it's not there. And it doesn't mean that you can't conclude that it's not there or that it is there, right? So, like for instance, like when I pointed out that when they had the vehicle coming in from out of town, right? On the picture there from the gas station. I said in that moment, all right, that tells me something because they're now traveling outside of Moscow to go look for cameras and things of that nature because they hadn't at that point. Not until after that camera came back on the gas station showing the white launcher coming in from a different direction, which, by the way, is probably what Ann Taylor means when she says wrong direction, wrong time. What she means is that in the probable cause affidavit, there are specific times mentioned and directions mentioned that that vehicle is traveling. And at that specific time, when the vehicle is coming in from another direction on one of his random drives, it's heading in a different direction than was initially put on there because it's not one of the times that they were highlighting. Now, in the PCA, it says this is a couple of numerous camera footage that was captured. It's not the only one, right? So that tells you there's quite a bit. But when that happened, when they went searching out of town, I said they didn't know this guy left. They thought there's no footage of him leaving that town because they didn't search anywhere else. So either that person knew the area and left town a direction that there is no cameras, which I found then years ago. I found it out there. I was like, hey, look, here it is. This is the place that you can travel to get away from these cameras. Right. And I said they didn't know that. They thought that maybe perhaps he was still in town. Now that they see this, they're thinking of different opportunities and possibilities. And sure enough, I mean, that's pretty much what ended up happening. So you can deduce things using logic and common sense to figure some things out in this case. You don't have to be told everything or handheld everything or fed everything by a spoon to figure this one out, in my opinion. Let's see. Thank you, Nina Drew, for your $4.99 super sticker. I truly appreciate that. Thank you so much. Let's see. Why do you have to be? I said it first in a quadruple homicide. I'm not saying that I had to say it first. I'm saying that I did say this a long time ago, meaning that I had an understanding of this case well before, especially a lot of these YouTubers who have no experience in law enforcement or court orders or court documents or trial outside of their own trials, things of that nature. When you don't have experience and you don't know these things, you're going to be wrong quite a bit, right? The reason I haven't been wrong on a lot of it, if not all of it, and I've called out things like, this is what we're going to see. This is what you're going to know. This is what the prosecution is doing. This is what the defense is saying. I've been able to pull those things out because I do have experience. I understand what's going on. And it's unfortunate that even at the point where some of these people are taking too long to understand it, they're putting out false information about it, which is why none of the things that they say end up coming true. I mean, if it were, Bryan Kohberger would have been freed a long time ago. I think there was like a poll going around on the Kohberger stuff saying that, they had a couple of dates. They did a poll on which date, before this date, before that date, or that date, like random dates out there when he'll be released based on corruption and this, that, and a third, and a bunch of stuff that don't exist. So it has no idea to be about me saying I said it right or said it first. It's about me saying it right. Know what I mean? I just so happen to be the first because I understand it and I got experience in this. It's obvious that the IGG broke this case, and I don't see what the big deal is. Rachel Maureen case law, you probably announced. That's how it was solved. They proudly announced that. Yeah, 100%. It's been used in a bunch of different cases. But anything to believe that your man is innocent, right? These are the ride or die crew for Bryan Kohberger. These are the groupies that just can't handle it. They're the ones that are the delusional ones, and yada, yada, yada. Because even at that, let's just say the IgG, right? The reason it's inadmissible is because the IgG experts aren't testing Bryan Kohberger's DNA via swab to the DNA on the knife sheath. What they did is they got the STR profile, or got an SNP profile, created an SNP profile from the STR profile. You need the STR profile first. And from that information, an SNP profile is created. And what they do is they look for possible relatives, and they go through family trees, timelines, grandparents, yada, yada. So basically what it is like, let's just say I do a ancestry test, and my fifth cousin or my second cousin, five times removed or whatever, comes up. Well, we're 5 times removed from each other. That means we have like what, great grandparents. And so they find out who my great grandparent is, and they start going down the timeline. All right, who was born, how many, blah 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 blah, until they come to a point where they say with a high percentage that they believe. Remember, it's believed. They're not testing anything, so they can't say concrete. That they believe that the person who left the DNA is this person based on their DNA and comparisons to all these other people. Then, well, the prosecution has to go out there and basically collect the DNA and test it to see if it's actually true. Then, so you have to do that legally. Probably a couple of trash dives. Kohberger cleaned his apartment fairly well, his office fairly well, so they probably didn't find anything there. Obviously, if they would have, well, they didn't even know. Well, they knew who he was on December 19th. I don't think they actually searched his home until after his arrest or his apartment. They probably went there, tried to pull some DNA off of some things, and saw that there was nothing there, right? No trash outside, nothing on the doorknob, nothing on the door handles, things of that nature. Stuff that they can do. Now, how do you know if the IgG was done right? The way you test it is by testing your suspect's DNA to the DNA, the SRT profile, not the SNP that they use for the IgG, but the STR that was created in the beginning, right? From leaving the DNA behind. If it matches, then that means the IgG was done correctly. If it doesn't match, then that means the IgG was not done correctly. Well, Kohberger matched like what, 5 octillion million times or to 1 or something like that. So there you go. From what we know, I believe Ethan was attacked in bed and possibly passed out due to pain inflicted. Xana was taken, and Ethan came to long enough to drag himself off the bed to try and crawl. From what I understand, I'll say it this way. Howard Bloom claims that Ethan, as he was getting out of bed, that Bryan Kohberger allegedly slashed against his throat, and that he fell down, or he went down from there. Whether he stayed on the bed or fell to the ground, I don't know. But from what I understand, I don't know if he was wasn't alive too long after that, or able to get up and do crawl or any of those things. As far as Xana, I'm stumped. I'm not sure. I know that Kaylee was up against the wall in the corner. Maddie was on the outside of the bed. Kaylee had a lot of injuries. Maddie had relatively very small amount, more precision type, which makes sense that if somebody walked in and there was 2 people asleep and he stabbed one while they were asleep, he could just precisely do it. And then the other one wakes up. You have to be a little bit more ferocious with your attack, so that way you silence that person as fast as possible from waking up anybody else in the house. And I strongly suspect that those are the things that took place in that. I think it was third floor downstairs after that. Let's see. Wasn't he blocking the door? So that's what I've been told. I said this a while ago that Christy told me during the celebration of life that Hunter Johnson had gone up to her husband. They had a conversation. He said that he was called to that house. He's the one that called or yelled out to call 911 and is the one that spoke to the dispatcher. She had told me that he went up there and he tried to get in, but the door was blocked. And then he managed to get in, saw what he saw, and then said, "Get out." I'm assuming to Dylan and Bethany. And they called 911 at that time. Now, these were emotional people, both Steve and Hunter, blocked and locked, may have been confused for each other. I don't know. But that's what she initially told me. But she wasn't 100% certain. You know, she was like, "I'm not sure. This is what he told me." And or that's what he told her husband, and that's what her husband told her. So I think that it makes sense, in the beginning when we heard about the 12 hours or the 8 hours before the 911 call, etc. Yeah, I'd hypothesized that the door may have been locked. Let's see. Is there any real motive in this case? Well, what do we know about the case, right? There's audio coming from outside of the 50 feet outside of the house that starts off with whimpers, a thud, and dog barking. There ain't sounds of somebody losing their mind, out of control, like rage or drunk or alcohol or steroids, those type of things. Somebody drove around there 3 times before they actually went in, methodically entered, took the lives of these people, and then left. We know that there's DNA on a knife sheath, but I would assume had they had DNA under the fingernails or hair or any of those type of things, that they would have used that instead of the DNA on the knife sheath. But I could be wrong. They might be using the DNA in the knife sheath because there could be a partial fingerprint on it, and there's more evidence there to say that item belonged to Bryan Kohberger, and that was the item that was brought in that carried the weapon. And so that might be the reason why. And there could be some DNA underneath the fingernails. I just feel that if there was DNA like that would probably be a stronger piece of evidence than the knife sheath. And I feel that at that point at the PCA, they would have used that. And so somebody went in there, took the lives of 4 people without leaving much DNA of their own behind. Again, that doesn't sound like somebody drunk, somebody on drugs, somebody who's sweating up a storm, those type of things, to methodically do that. To me, this sounds like somebody methodically went in there, planned this out, and knew what they were doing. There's the part of means, right? There's opportunity, motive, and means being capable of doing this. Now, that doesn't mean that you're just capable of taking the life of another. It's also, are you capable of committing the crime in the manner that it was committed without leaving DNA behind, without leaving much evidence? Now, is that something that you can say that a drunk guy is doing who's love struck, or somebody who's drunk and pissed off and who was willing to fight Ethan in front of everybody because he's on roids and he's raging out? No, not at all. This isn't the same. These aren't evidence or things that you would expect to see in those type of cases. If all I was told was that information, about the sounds and how many times a person passed by and things of that nature without knowing anything else, I would have said this is a drifter. This is somebody from out of the area and somebody who's probably came in contact with these people at one point, stalked them, followed them around at some point. Now, I know there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, there's no evidence of him stalking," or that's what they said. I think that was an online thing because there's been court documents associated with every hearing that they've had. And in the court documents associated with the stalking situation, the prosecutor mentioned that there was no online stalking, specifically mentioned online. So I don't know if he didn't, obviously he may not have meant physically stalking the house. Remember, that was the key potential target in this case since the beginning, was the house. Maybe he did watch the house and targeted the house more than the persons inside of it, the ins and outs, when they go, when they come, stuff like that. I would have said that this is probably some sort of serial killer or wannabe serial killer. Just based off the evidence that you have there. If it was the boyfriend or anybody else, if they had their idea of who it may have been, this wasn't a cold case. This didn't go long. There's information to be had. If one of these guys were going to commit this crime, they would have had to have done certain things. They would have had to have left their home at a specific hour and time or night. They had to be out and about at that specific hour, time or night. They would have had to have access to a vehicle that matched the vehicle, the description that was one driving around. Even though they lived a couple of houses away, they had to have had access to this vehicle and have left it somewhere else and made their way back home. They had to have gotten home somehow. And you have video evidence, you have Ring doorbells, things of that nature that can capture video evidence of those type of things happening. That's why I said it didn't take very long for them to find out, or for them to get an arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger once they got his name, because it don't take much to figure those things out. Especially if you have the right person at the right time. Now, this was a cold case and it had been like 6-7 years and some information wasn't available and those type of things, and somebody came up with Bryan Kohberger's name, it might be a little bit harder to prove. You know what I mean? But this happened within 7 weeks, and it didn't take very long for his arrest. Let's see. I think his prints were left on the sheet because he didn't. I don't think he planned on leaving it behind either. Connor says his prints were in the system since he was a gun owner, right? I don't know how Pennsylvania works on their gun laws, and I'm not sure any of the guns were in his name. May have been his dad's guns. Do you have a HQL? I don't even know what that means. Hope the 23rd will be televised. I hope so too. I want to see what's going on. Why would they not get IgG test on the other 3 DNAs? Who says that they haven't? There was a court order or court document, and this has actually happened in 2 different places. It came out in court. I think it was still Judge. We made a big old stink about it too. Go back and watch that. You'll be able to find that because I actually bring up the hearing and what she says. But they say that they finished the DNA tests request that the defense brought up. They've cleared those people. Those, that's one of the things when I said that they screwed up when waiving their right of speedy trial, because that would have still been relevant back then. They may not have had those 3 DNA makeups created. They may not know who those people were. They may still be unidentified. The problems that they had with the pinging, which I don't think is going to be a big issue because fairly positive they're going to use the GPS from the phone. Now, the reason why they want to throw out the pings and not the GPS from the phone, and why we're not seeing that thing, is because if they throw out the pings and they throw out the phone and they throw out anything else that would have came up afterwards, so they don't have to disclose to the public all the information that maybe the prosecution may have against their client. They don't need to. If they can throw it out at this route of this point, all the evidence behind it will fall apart. But yeah, no, that's been cleared and found out. Like I said, I think they made a huge mistake waiving that speedy trial thing. Yeah, I'm in Missouri and I was fingerprinted when I bought my pistol. I'm not sure if Bryan Kohberger actually bought his pistols. I know one was confiscated, but was it his? Did he go and purchase it? I don't know. I know he was an educator, and I assume they may have done his fingerprints, but he was also a student there. So he was a student, assistant teacher, right? Professor, teaching assistant. I don't know if those guys get fingerprinted as like an educator. He does work there, so I'm assuming he got a paycheck that they probably did. But again, we're also thinking that that all the fingerprints were just perfectly pristine and right there for the taking. It's a good possibility that they were partials. And it wasn't like a lot of DNA that they found. If there was that significant amount of fingerprints and touching that they were able to pull up, that wasn't covered by blood or whatever the case may have been, then yeah, maybe they would have gotten a clear fingerprint. But I highly doubt that's the case. Just call me Detective Bubba. That's funny. Is that like a concealed handgun license? All that other stuff that you're saying? I'm not familiar with all these 3 and 4 letter acronyms. Oh, thank you, Nina. We did that. He's a serial killer and a psycho. I mean, think about it. There was a guy that was in Australia, right? And he stabbed like 18 people, killing 6 in a matter of like 15 minutes on 3 floors, 3 separate floors of an airport. And I think like 12 minutes of it was him running away from police. So those that say you can't kill 4 people that were asleep and intoxicated in 12 minutes, this guy did that in 15, killed more and stabbed way more. And none of his victims were asleep and intoxicated in bed at the middle of the night. So take that for what that is. But yeah. We have a 1999 super chat coming in from Coffee Cake. I disagree. It was the Aryan Brotherhood sending a message to Madeline and Xana's family. You have a great voice, but I think you are so wrong. Well, I appreciate the great voice thing. I appreciate the donation. So let's just say, let's go down this rabbit hole with the Aryan Brotherhood stuff. Bryan Kohberger wasn't found by Moscow Police Department or the Idaho State Police. It was the FBI. It was the FBI, it was Moscow Police Department, Idaho State Police. Are they all 3 agencies in cahoots with the Aryan Brotherhood? And if so, let's just say that they are. And let's just say the Aryan guys did this. Why would they blame Bryan Kohberger? When would they blame Bryan Kohberger? And how would they blame Bryan Kohberger? So why is a couple of reasons. Like, how did they even know his name? How did they know who he was to blame him? Now, if you had a situation where you're just trying to blame anybody, don't you think that the people that you've arrested for a lot of different crimes, maybe mental health crime, folks that have committed crimes, mental health problems, people that have committed murder, aren't those guys more of the easy fall guys to blame this on versus PhD student at the neighboring college? Like, how do they even know who that guy is? Now, I've had some people say, well, he applied as an intern police officer. Well, that was with Pullman Police Department, not with Moscow. So how would they even know who he is? Why would they frame him? Then we got to go with when. All right. So when did Moscow Police Department, FBI, and Idaho State Police decide? And don't forget, Pullman, Washington, those departments there were also involved. When did they decide that, hey, it needs to be Bryan Kohberger? Because that knife sheath was collected day one by the Idaho State Lab forensic team. And they took that to the Idaho State Lab for testing. That's where they found the DNA evidence, right? And for them to have gotten it back so quick, they probably would have sent it in really early in this case. So how long was it in this investigation that they decide, hey, we're going to frame this guy we're going to frame Bryan Kohberger for the Aryan Brotherhood? And where'd they get his DNA from? I mean, the guy was by himself all the time wearing latex gloves. You couldn't even find DNA from him when he was living at his parents' house, and they were trying to gather it on purpose. But yet we're supposed to believe that they got his DNA and they put it on the knife sheath. Well, comes a question of when, right? Well, is it like day one? Hey, got a phone call. We have this quadruple homicide. It was the Aryan brother. We need to work on putting that DNA there now. Because if they don't, and the Idaho State Lab collects it, well, that DNA gets inserted into a national database. The database that Moscow Police Department, the FBI, nor the Idaho State Police can go into and change the DNA sequence on. It's impossible. It's already there. The sheath was collected day one. DNA was put in day one. They can't go back in time and change that. It's over. It's him. There was no Aryan Brotherhood thing that went along with it. Not one iota of that at all. There's no way it is possible that anybody framed Bryan Kohberger with the information that we know and the amount of the agencies that were involved and the national databases that are involved to hold these pieces of evidence and information. It is absolutely 100% false. And if that's all you can say to prove or to think that you can say that shows that this guy is innocent, well, you're living on a prayer there, because it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. You got more than a long shot. It's an impossibility. I mean, you can try and say, oh yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense because of this, or it makes sense because of that. When it comes down to the actual evidence, it's impossible. And so for all the reasons that you may or may not think that it's possible because of whatever anybody else may have said or done, the truth is, and the fact is, that DNA was collected and inserted into a national database that nobody can change or take out or do anything to. It is monitored by agencies across the nation. It's impossible. Possible. So let's get that thought or theory out of our heads, because it's not realistic. I mean, that's about as realistic as somebody saying that Bryan Kohberger, jumped out of an airplane and parachuted onto the third floor for no reason and committed this crime. I mean, even Bryan Kohberger would be a person that would be a better fall guy than Bryan Kohberger. I mean, I don't think you guys understand if you're going to try to get away with something, blaming somebody else for like murder the way that they have with the Karen Reed case or even the Bryan Kohberger case, it's not the way to go. Now, if you want something to disappear, like in the Karen Reed case, you say, hey, we do think he was hit by a car. We don't know which car. Karen Reed's tail light was still connected, even though it was cracked. She backed into his car, but it's obvious that he was hit by a car. We're going to keep this in an open investigation until we find this car, and it goes away because there's no other car. If John O'Keefe was actually killed by the Alberts and some fight and all this other stuff, the most logical thing, especially for somebody who has experience as a detective, as Albert has, to say, hey, just leave it as an open investigation. Everything will be closed because it's an open investigation. Nobody will be able to do a Freedom of Information Act and find out anything. That's how you get away with some stuff like that. Not saying, oh yeah, this person did it and then change it from manslaughter to murder and make this one of the most biggest profile cases in the nation. That's not how you do it. Same thing with this case here in Bryan Kohberger. Just weird stuff that people think of. Let's see. At some point, all the Kohberger's creators will start to say they always knew BK was guilty. Yeah. No, I don't think so, man. Freaking Richard Allen said he killed the Libby and Abby. I don't know how many different times. He talked about things that only the killer would know. He talked about those things before he went and started eating his own crap, and they still didn't believe him. They still don't believe him. It's amazing. I bet you Bryan Kohberger can confess. He can do a Dennis Rader type of court hearing and talk about his motive and why and how he did it. And the Kohbergers will be like, it was the bad conditions that he had in jail. They forced it out of him. Please. There you go. This is true. Definitely premeditated and planned. My opinion, plus K-Bar and Dick is purchased in advance. 100%. 100%. Best way to explain the motive in this case is an underlying sexual deviancy. One must understand that he intended to go for one person Kaylee thwarted his plan, and others were collateral. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. If I could step inside of the mind of BK, what is that makes him think he'd be exonerated? Where is he going wrong in his thinking? Well, he talked about using his to check his locations, right? He's a cloud-based forensic guy, right? That's what his studies were in. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to manipulate things on his phone to try to show that he was somewhere else, right? Or do things, put it in a dark bag, so that way it's on, but not reporting to the network because it's not doing any of those things. And he's saying, "Hey, you can't put me there. My phone don't put me there. Yada yada yada. I have a history of doing this, of driving out late at night." And I think he probably, when did he say that, right? He said, "I look forward to being exonerated," before he went to Moscow, Idaho, meaning before he got the PCA and actually understood what the evidence was against him. This guy probably didn't even realize how many mistakes he made, which, I mean, he made a lot. He made a lot of dumb mistakes. Left the knife sheath behind with DNA on it, drove his own car to the scene and got it on camera, took his phone with him when he went and committed the crime and just merely turned it off or disconnected it from the towers. I mean, everybody says they don't believe it's him because of how stupid those mistakes are. My question to them and to you guys is, if he made a bunch of stupid mistakes, why are you surprised that he's caught? I don't get it. I mean, I would expect somebody to have done all those things to be caught fairly quickly, especially once they have his name, like within 10 days. Hey, guess what? That's kind of what happened. Kind of what happened. Yep. Let's see. Yeah, I definitely think they got their man. Why would Aryans? I don't know. It's probably some weird theory that somebody came up to try to say something about the families. I mean, that's when you know you've gone to a new low, is when you start blaming victims' family members who had nothing to do with it, who have done nothing but try to put out information so that this crime was solved correctly in the beginning. You know what I mean? The information that they knew or thought of at the time. But it's probably that. There's some sick people out there. I mean, they remind me of those people that go and protest. Now, I'm an ex-military guy. I was in the Army. And, I went around into the Army around 9/11. And, some people didn't agree with the war and things of that nature. And I understand that. But to go and protest at a soldier's funeral while their family members are grieving, to make a political stand when, these people, they're not thinking about politics or the war or anything like that. They're thinking about their loved one that's being dropped in the ground. And yet they have the audacity to be there and call them things and say things. That's what the Kohbergers and the free Karen Reed people remind me of. And it's really, really sickening, to be 110% honest with you. It's disgusting. I'll tell you what, there is a conspiracy that I do believe in. And that's little tidbit. Go look at the Statue of Liberty, and go look at a painting from the same time. I can't remember the painter's name, but he did a couple paintings, but like of Lucifer. And man, there's a lot of correlations there. They look alike. That's in my opinion. I think they may have thought that was what this, our folks are. And when you get people like that are treating victims, family members, seems like hell and devilish to me. But that's just my opinion. I could never go up to somebody who is grieving over a loved one and blame them for the passing or call them stupid or an idiot because they don't believe the things that I do, like in the John O'Keefe's family members had to endure. Like, that was disgustingly sick to see. There's reasons why I didn't cover that case for a long time, and it had to do with that. which is why I kept that one lady in the interviews that we were listening to, where she said, any idiot knows that Karen Reed is innocent. And I made the comment, well, I'm not an idiot, so I don't think she's innocent. It's a free country. You guys can do what you want. Regardless, I just think it's disgusting. That's it. I'm going to go through here real quick. Thank you. Steph C., I don't disagree with you. I appreciate that, Carrie. She says, I used to listen to other podcasts and recently started watching old ones from the beginning, and the crap they have come up with is out of this world. DTS is the only one I watch now. I appreciate that. Yeah, at the end of the day, what I'm here to bring you guys is it's just the truth. You know, if something were to pop up, if something did come up about police or whatever, like in the Karen Reed case, Proctor, I've said it multiple times. The guy's a disgusting man, does not deserve to be a police officer, and his credibility is shot and should never be on a case again. I can agree with that. Did I get a chance to go to Moscow before the house was turned on? I was not. I did not. I wanted to, but it's work and time and weather was a huge component to that. You know, when it started to warm up and things of that nature, my job started to heat up. So I couldn't get out there. But I appreciate everybody tuning in. That's going to be it for us today. I'll be back on Thursday. I'll probably do either a Q&A, or if anything else pops up, we'll talk about those things, either in the Bryan Kohberger case or Karen Reed case or anything new. Please hit that like and subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Do I have an email? I do. It is drunkturkeyshow@gmail.com. Let me put that up real quick. There it is, drunkturkeyshow@gmail.com. Hit me up. Also, if you want to get a hold of me, the easiest way to do it, I do get my emails. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days to check them, but on Facebook, if you find Drunk Turkey Show on Facebook, you can message me there, and I'm pretty quick about it. Not the fastest, because I still have a lot of things to do in my regular life, but I do get on there and check those things daily. So check me out there, hit me up. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and let me know when you guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. With that being said, I'm out of here, guys. See you next time. Peace.